All right. Hello, April here. Welcome to another episode of UNAWA, our online conversational series that comes from the Filipino word that means to understand. We want to encourage Filipino youth and families to find common ground and understanding with each other and aid in the normalization of mental health in the Filipino community. Now, before we begin, we wish to acknowledge that the land in which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including Cree, Saulteaux, Naistapi, Blackfoot, Métis, and Nakota Sioux. In this episode, we want to explore barriers and the importance of advocacy of Filipino education in our city and province. We want to welcome back our guest, Tita Josephine Pallard. Again, Tita Josephine is an economic immigrant from Baguio City, Philippines in the late 60s, founded 3 prestigious nonprofit organizations in Edmonton, and she is currently the principal of the Filipino Language and Culture School of Edmonton, which was founded in 1983 and accredited in 2006 by Alberta Education in teaching grade 10, 11, and 12. We have J.R. Delara, is a first-generation Filipino Canadian and teacher with Edmonton Catholic Schools, currently in his 6th year of teaching. Mark Laraya is a Filipino and science 3rd-year teacher at St. Oscar Romero High School, graduated from University of Alberta with a Bachelor's of Education, majoring in biology and a minor in chemistry, and at the Grace Alarcon-Isla University of Alberta graduate with over 25 years of teaching experience and a background in early literacy, curriculum development, education resource acquisition, and English as a second language. So welcome everyone to our discussion. Our first question, for those who don't know, the history of Filipino language and culture education in Edmonton. How was it started?
I think that's for me to say. Okay, back in 1978, there's already a group of so many leaders here in Edmonton coming from all over the world, but most of them were Eastern European leaders. So they were from Ukraine, they were from Poland, they were from France, and so on. And there were only very few coming from Asia, and that's myself, Chinese, Vietnamese, and quite a few others. What we were talking about at the time was how can we really start bringing in our own heritage language program here in Edmonton? Because there were only 2 languages that were spoken. Okay, when you go to school at that time, only French and English, nothing more, not Mandarin, no Spanish, nothing. So what we started, because we had quite a few, quite a few influence on very highly professional people at the University of Alberta. Say, for instance, just like Dr. Olenka Bilash, who is really the major person, if we want to talk about heritage languages, to be really a speaker, if we want to have her. And some others that really said there is a need for us not to lose our own culture. Because when I came to Canada, any of the students that I taught, because I've taught in Canada for the past 38 years. So what happened here is they said, we are looking at a certain kind of a law here in Alberta at the time that if you speak your language with your classmates who belong to the same origin, country of origin, you are going to be fined. Okay, you're going to be fined a certain amount of money. So maybe 5 cents for every word that you would speak. Okay, and that was my experience up in Laclabish, my first position as a teacher. And that was a place where there were so many Ukrainians, a few Filipinos were there. There were 10 of us Filipinos, but the rest were all different parts of the world. So they were not able, our children were not even able to speak their own language among themselves in order to be able to understand the language. So then when I went back to the university, we gathered among ourselves the linguistic leaders of the university, and we said, what are we going to do? Well, we have to start, number one, an organization that's going to really influence whatever's going on. So we started an organization in 1978 called Alberta Ethnic Language Teachers. And it was called IELTA at the time. which was changed into International and Heritage Languages Association in order to be able to be more inclusive. When we finished that in 1978, I sat down with the Filipino teachers that came to Canada with me, and I said, what are we doing? This is now a certain kind of a challenge among linguistic people at the university. Are we going to join them? And of course, they said, sure, because there were so many Filipino teachers that came at the time with us, and we were all teaching despite the fact that we did not have a certificate. Okay, so we had a letter of authority in order to be able to teach. So then we said, we are teachers here, and we are watching many of the ethnocultural children not able to speak the language in school. Either they're going to be punished by the principal, or they're going to be fined a certain kind of amount of money. So as Filipino teachers, we said, why don't we start a Filipino language program? So we started it, and we called it Kabataang Filipino Language School. That was the first one in 1979. As we progressed, we come to realize that it's not just kabataan. Okay, it's not just the youth that we're going to be teaching, because then, as you said, and myself, being married to another culture, you are going to teach your own language, and he's going to teach his own language to your children. So what are we going to do? We're not going to fight. We're not going to say, my language is more superior than you are. I'm married to a French guy, and I'm not going to accept that because French is a national language, that my daughter will only be speaking French at home. I had to speak to her in the Filipino language as well. Okay, so all the teachers that were there said, let's start it. So we started, and the first students that we had were our own children of Filipino Canadian Sarana Association. Before we knew it, it progressed, it prospered quite easily, that we only now need a school. We only had one little room under, I can't even remember that church now, St. Anthony's was one of the churches where we started our language, but it was such a small area. So when we were able to have 50 students, we went to Bonnie Doon, which was then the Bonnie Doon High School building. We were there for quite a few years. We progressed. More and more students were coming. We transferred to the University of Alberta. But then in the late 1990s, the University of Alberta said, you are not going to be using us anymore, or the rooms, unless you pay. And we said, oh my goodness, the public school made use of us, or allowed us to use their building freely, not with the university. So then we left the university. By so doing, we did not have enough room for many of the students. But then Alberta Education said, look, there are so many Filipinos that are coming to Edmonton. Why don't you start working on a curriculum in order to be able to make it accredited? So in 2000, we started working on accreditation. And at that time, we were able to get our certification as teachers. So 2 teachers from Calgary and 4 of us here in Edmonton came together, and we started working our first curriculum. But at that time, because the first language that was brought in other than French was Spanish, one of the first ones. So we were able to use the Spanish curriculum as our main resource in order to be able to have the Filipino language. Not knowing that at the same time in the Philippines, they're also talking about how can we use mother tongue in our own schools at the same time teaching the Filipino language and English language. So when we heard about that, we said, well, maybe we can ask books from the Philippines. Sure enough, they were able to give us resources in order to be able to have all the different grade levels. But because there were only 6 teachers that were certified at the time, we only said maybe we can start from grade 4. And so the grade 4 curriculum was started, and the first school that taught grade 4 was St. Mark's and St. Clement's. Now, the problem that we had after that was the fact that the teachers that were teaching then at that time retired, and there were no more certified teachers. So we continued working just maybe a few students in as much as we cannot anymore accommodate them. And our teachers that are certified or certificated were also going down because they were retiring. So what we did was to really work hard on the curriculum in the early 2000, and we finished it in 2006. Alberta Education looked at it and they said, hey, this is good. We will give you the credit of 15 units for grade 10, 11, and 12. And that's how it goes. And that's how history of our Filipino language and culture has evolved. So it was very difficult because right now, I'm so happy to see Mark and Jay as certified teachers, but we need them too in our heritage language program because Alberta Education said we will have to make a division, make it a locally developed, which is community, and it's going to be called heritage language program, and the ones will be under the Catholic school division. Not one of the public school division has offered a school in order to be able to start Filipino language program. So maybe that's one of the challenges that we are going to put forward in order for us to advocate what we want the Filipino language program to go on in the future. So that's the history of the Filipino language here. Again, everyone was a volunteer. There was no compensation whatsoever to this very day. Every single teacher that went through the Filipino language, even if they are supposed to be paid $45 an hour, nothing. It was all voluntary because of the idea that we want to preserve and retain our Filipino language in the coming generation at the same time in our present generation. So we are moving on with Grace now as our coordinator, and with you, Mark, Jay, and many others. Maybe after listening to this, they might be able to come and say, okay, here we are, we can help. And maybe that's where we will have to strategize how we can move on with our Filipino language program. So that's how we started. Wow. And we're looking forward.
But yeah, I didn't know about the history of the Filipino language and culture here. I thought it was just like, oh, someone developed it and then now it's being implemented. But now hearing from Tita Josie, like the history and like the challenges and how it was brought to me as a teacher inspired me to actually do better in terms of my language teaching. Not gonna lie, there are moments where I'm like, oh my God, I'm teaching languages again next year and so on and so forth, like the same thing. But now I have this like sense of encouragement right now, like from Tita Josie herself saying like, this is the history. You're now part of the history. So continue doing it. So yeah, and that's, I think one thing that I am also thinking about recently is how can I, as a teacher, try to encourage more youth to join the Filipino language and culture programs? And also, how can we encourage our students to also become one? Because I think that's also one of the challenges that we have right now, just like what Teacher Josie said. A lot of the teachers back then got retired. I think I know one, Miss Sumalinog, Virginia. I think she was my Filipino teacher back at Romero. She retired and someone replaced her, and then she's now teaching somewhere else. So there's now no more Filipino teacher here at Romero. So when they found it was, I can speak one, I was like, okay, I'll do it. But now hearing it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm part of this.
And don't get too discouraged, Mark, because I had a couple of students that are now in university in education that went through Filipino 35. So it is coming.
Oh my God, that's awesome!
I know. I'm like,
we can be mentor teachers, because I was so recently like our principal sent us like this email like, oh, we need mentor teachers for these languages. I'm like, where's a Filipino one? I'm actually looking for one. I'm like, I want to be a mentor teacher for a Filipino student teacher, but I like that. Like there are some students
that are on their way. Give it
Yes,
more
yes,
year.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I actually have something to add to that. I'm actually the president of a nonprofit called Heart of Yeg Filipino Community. One of our members is actually going to be graduating as a teacher, and she speaks fluent Filipino as well. And I've told her about all of this. She's very interested, and your pointers, JR, Mark, about telling the school when you get an interview that you speak Filipino language. She's been doing that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And that the other hurdle really is we do have Filipino teachers with the Edmonton Catholic schools. The problem is they don't speak Filipino. And that is where like a lot of principals are just, we want to open it up. We have Filipinos here who are, I'm sure they will take that course, but they do not have the resources for teachers who actually could speak. And there are, Filipino teachers who speak, they're like the first generation of Canadians here, born here, but has a little bit of that Filipino culture in them and has that little bit of Filipino, but they're not, they don't want to take over to look at the curriculum and teach when they themselves do not have that acquisition, right? And I always tell them, you learn as you go. Like, that's what teaching is. When I first started teaching, I made so much mistakes. I've been called to the principal's office, and that's just main teaching. That's why the curriculum is there. You have a guide, right? So, I mean, yes, we should encourage our students who are in high school. One of the venues would be this podcast, right? Hopefully all these young adults going into education who has a little bit of Filipino language in them can springboard to teach. Like we're here with the Filipino Canadian Saranay Association, they can always come, right? And observe classes or take the adult class. I've got friends who are second generation born and they had no knowledge of speaking Filipino, but they want to learn now because, like I said, part of the identity as well, right? So, yeah.
Anyone listening, consider going to education, especially if you are a Filipino speaker, because that's I guess one of the current barriers now is because our language consultant and I've been talking about it is that one of the biggest hurdle too is there are no Filipino courses in university. And so if, for example, they go into education and they were to minor or major in a language, Filipino is not listed there. There is, I think, an other languages option, which we're going to look into on how that works. But if they don't have that kind of, I guess, doorway in university, it'll be difficult. But so maybe that's the next thing we can tackle is that someone goes into university and starts those courses at U of A or other post-secondary institutions for that matter.
Now, there's a good news here. Our Philippine Consul General is really very impressed with the Filipino Canadian Saranay Association's Filipino Language and Culture. That we had a meeting with him before Christmas, and he is inviting teachers, highly qualified linguistic teachers from the Philippines to come and talk to us about our curriculum. Wow. Okay. And at the same time, he said, maybe I will be talking to Alberta, to the University of Alberta, if we can have a little kind of a hub for our Filipino language program, because now he is going towards nursing, knowing that there's a need for nurses. But maybe if we can say, how about, as what Mark said, if there's maybe one course that's saying teaching methodology on Filipino language, okay? That would be good. And if we will be able to let our Consul General know that there is an interest and that there's already 5 or 6 of us here who are really qualified people to mentor the graduate students, that would be good. So maybe that will be, Grace, one point that we can talk with our Consul General when we meet the next time. And we will call all of you for that meeting for sure. And that's with Calgary, because Calgary is the same. They have lost so many certified teachers that they only have 2 schools teaching Filipino now. They had more ahead of us before. Yeah. So that's good.
Amazing. There's so much good coming out of this conversation right now. And I think all of the questions I was going to ask you just springboarded into it. But I do have another one. Is there, how can people learn the language outside of school? I know Saranay and such. Are there other ways or any resources that you can share with the audience so that they know where they can go if they did want to learn the language?
With Filipino language and culture school, that is one that is outside of classes, because ours is on weekends, and we do have the kindergarten to grade 12. Our kindergarten to grade 6 right now is actually still online. But the grade 7 to grade 12 are in person. So yeah, and it's very encouraging because I'm getting calls from parents that their children had found out, and I don't know, I guess our pamphlets all over the place now, that, there's this course or there's this class that they want to go to. And sometimes when their friends say, oh, I go to Filipino class, it's like, oh, what is that, right? So yeah, and we've got interest, just sometimes, Sundays don't work for them or things, but then that comes into value, right? What do you value the most? Do you value learning the language? So it always comes to your family value, or what do you really want? And it's usually the parents. We always tell the parents, it's you who are going to be guiding them to take this course. And that's the thing, right? So, all my kids don't want to learn it. I said, but you are going to make it an important part of your family values that you are going to learn this. It will still stem from the parents.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, Tita Grace, as well. Like, it has to come from our parents as well. I'm not a parent or anything, but it has to come because there are role models, right? So if they are if they're encouraging their children to speak Filipino, I'm a Tagalog dialect, so I'm used to it, a Filipino language in the household, then the children get to pick up those little words as well. And actually, during the Christmas break, a lot of my students gave me like Amazon gift cards, so thank you, students, for giving that to me. But I was able to actually grab so many children's book off Amazon. Like, so many. There are so many children's book. Like, there's one, Ako Ba Ay Maliit. It's like, it's actually a book that was translated in so many languages, but there's a Filipino one now. There's another one where Ang Giraffe na Kumain ng Buwan, the giraffe that ate the moon. So there's those children's book that parents could read to their children, and then they pick up those small words as well, right? So that's another way for them to also learn the language outside of classes.
And I actually have a story about that. I too went to Amazon, Mark.
Yeah.
And I got flashcards and a book about Filipino songs, Bahay Kubo, all of them. And then I showed my nanay, she's 94, and my mom, yes, my grandma is still alive. She'll be 95 in February. But they just had so much fun, like, singing it with my kids, and then thinking about like, oh, paano ulit yung tono niyan or whatever, like, how does that song go, and like, it brought them back to their childhood. Then they connected with my children, and I just found that so wonderful. And with the flashcards, we actually have like a poster where I change my son's diaper. So now he's always like, read Filipino. So he goes like, Lolo, Lola, Ate, Kuya. So yeah, there's a lot of resources, which I thought was so nice to see on Amazon at that, right? Like,
yeah, so much. I think I got like 10 children's book that I'm going to
Yeah.
read to my students now. I don't
Nice.
care if they're in grade 10, 11, or 12. I'm going to read to them.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
they do enjoy it because
They do.
whenever I sub for like the older kids, all I know is elementary stuff. I do bring in those games. I bring in those books, and they are engrossed because we always say bring in baby books, but they actually because they can connect, right? They connect to those words. I know it. I'm smart, right? Now I know, like it gives them that confidence. So yeah, bringing all those books into high school, bringing literature in I'm a big literature fan, bringing reading, music, singing, even movement into that, making all that connections is awesome. And because we live in a global world, we actually can have that access to buying. Like I've got so much books in here that my kids, like some of them are torn already because they're their favorites. But yeah, so it's nice to have that. We do have local authors as well in Canada that we want to promote as well. Another way that we can actually promote the language is going through the Edmonton Public Library. So what it is you can go to the Edmonton Public Library and say these are publishers that can send you books, and these publishers will have all the list of books that you could have in your library, right? So, graphic novels are a big hit, but yeah, it always surprises my relatives in the Philippines when they say, oh, what can we send with your dad when he's coming back? I'm like, oh, send me. And I have particular books that I want that you can't get from Amazon because I've researched it. It's from this publisher. And they're like, really? That's what you want? You don't want anything else? I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. I want books. I want poetry. I want, So the last time my parents went traveling 2 years ago, it was mostly about the history of the Philippines and anthologies, basically. Because you have your Jose Rizals and all that, but we wanted something modern. And hopefully we'll have a budget, right, Tita Josie? Always comes down to that money, right?
Don't get started with budget as well. Same thing with us. It's about the budget.
It's always about the budget.
Always about the budget.
Another thing we can really use, and that's what our school is doing, is the promotion of music. Even if they don't want to learn the language, we are teaching them. Our music directors are teaching them our repertoires in Filipino. At the same time, they're learning how to say the words, and we're also looking at a choral group. We know we have the choral Filipino, but they're more really just into singing. But if you bring some of these adults to our organization, they will start learning not just to sing the Filipino language, but also conversing at the same time. So the music, the singing, and the dancing. And of course, the history. These are all what entail the culture that we do other than the grammar, the grammatical part of the language. So that's the way we can really work together with Mark and JR in your own schools.
Yes, Tita Josie, we're actually going to reach out to you very soon, as Edmonton Catholic Schools will be starting up a Filipino Heritage Month in June. And so we would like to work together, even you, Grace, we'd like for you guys to be a part of it. And so Oscar Romero, Sister Anna Brockman, Holy Trinity, and Holy Family, those schools that we have that have the Filipino language and culture program, we will be kind of just working together to promote the Filipino Heritage Month within our division.
Okay, because when I was teaching, I was able to bring in my own school a multicultural month where most of our diverse students are showing their culture. And when it was the Filipino, I also brought the Filipino rondalia and maybe showing them our food. So that was part of the culture that we had in our schools. You can start that in your own schools.
Definitely.
Yes, definitely. We will be there.
Can I add on to the resources? I just have something. I I promote this publisher a lot, and I think they're based in Singapore. And this is what we use for our Filipino language and culture program, because it basically goes along with the curriculum that we have, and it goes through all the thematic units. So if you guys, we're not paid by these guys, but they have really good resources. Tuttle Publishing, Tuttle. So I think maybe at the April, like the resources you got, the flashcards and whatnot, it's probably from this publisher. So they have books such as like Pandesal Saves the Day. It's an activity book all about the Philippines, the flashcards. They have Filipino ghost stories. There's so many different things, and they're actually really good. So it ranges from like advanced to all the way from like beginner. Also, the resources kind of go hand in hand. Like you can get one of the books and then it will tie in with another one. So yeah, if you guys, and there's also like audio practices, which is very important when you're learning a language. So that's why I kind of, we use this a lot within our Filipino language culture program.
You know what? Call the Edmonton Public Library so that they can actually bring this in as well.
I think a lot of their books they have some already, but yeah, no, definitely maybe looking into maybe getting whatever they have.
Yeah, because for us, we are not part of a school system. We're private, considered private and standalone. Most of our parents, we send them to the public library and we'll pull books out and we'll have names and stuff for them to look. Like when we weren't online and they were in person, we will have a parent day where they come in and they look at the books and things like that. Or their kids will show them, this is my favorite book, right? So things like that. And a lot of them were old publishers. Some of the publishers are gone. So yeah, so just we want something new. I haven't gotten a chance to speak with the Edmonton Public Library because their main branch had gone through a different a switch of administration. So they kind of held off on that. Then the pandemic hit. So all about the pandemic, right? So
wow, so much sponsorship from Amazon and Total Publishing. Like, send us stuff. Thank you.
You can actually, Auntie Grace, Tita Josie, you guys can actually request exam and desk copies from them, and they will receive, like, I don't know if you remember, Mark, when we had that meeting and I had a whole box of books, that was free. They sent that, but if you go to their website, you can request some desk copies of their books, and
and that's a thing too. I think just as educators of Filipino language, I think we'll need to have to meet. And I've been kind of wanting to do this for a long time, and but yeah, we'll have to meet up and kind of put our brains together, because really the curriculum, although thank you, Tita Josie, for making it, I think it needs to improve a lot of improvements.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so
from the Spanish generic curriculum.
Yeah. So, and then because I'm a early literacy specialist, we want to finish this. We want to finish from kindergarten all the way to grade 12. And I think the only way we could do this is making sure that all the teachers who are already in the field to come together and say, we want this finished. Yeah. We want it improved as well.
Well, I think everyone already touched on this, but just to close off the conversation and to give more information to the viewers, how can they get involved and what can they do to support the work that you're all doing?
Send their kids to the Filipino language program.
I was going to say that.
Yeah. So, Ate Grace and Tita Josie, can you just what's your website? Do you have Instagram or Facebook, anything like that? Just let everyone know so everyone that's watching this can go check you out and hopefully register their kids or themselves.
The website is www.filcan, Filcan, Saranay, Saranay, association.com. So if you type in Saranay, Saranay, our website will come up. We are also on Facebook, Instagram. We have a great IT youth group that handles all this. So it's all voluntary, but volunteer work. But yeah, send your kids to us, and we will have the future of Filipino language
under the leadership of this young generation.
Yes.
Right?
Thank you,
Mark?
everyone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, for sure.
For us, for Mark and I, we
Yes.
are with Edmonton Catholic Schools. So basically, our language and culture programs. So with Mark and I, he's at Oscar Romero, I'm at Holy Trinity. So we have a 3-year program, which is basically grade 10 to 12. And in the other schools that we have a 9-year program, which is from grade 4 to grade 9, and that's at Sister Anata Brockman. And I know Holy Family has just started kind of just for junior high for now, they said. So they're kind of just developing it. There's another Filipino teacher there. And so hopefully they start to continue that. And there will be 4 schools again with Edmonton Catholic Schools with the Filipino Language and Culture Program.
Great.
Yes, that's true. I'm sorry for the shameless plug, but Mr. _ Laraya is my teacher Instagram. So I feature lots of my classes there. Like whenever we play Filipino games, Filipino dances, we do something Filipino classes, it's always there. So if you actually want to see pictures of what actually goes on in Filipino language class, go to my Instagram.
I'm going to do the same. So if you go to that Filipino teacher at THAT Filipino teacher, and the reason why I went with that is when I first started at Holy Trinity, they're like, oh, that Filipino teacher. And ever since then, I was known as that Filipino teacher because I was one of the first ones. Now we have about 4 or 5 Filipino teachers, but they don't really speak Filipino. We talked about that already.
Yes.
So yeah, head on to my Instagram and you can see what takes place at our Filipino Language and Culture program at Trinity.
Great.
Good.
And then can we just also have for the Filipino speaking teachers watching, where can they go to get more information if they want to help advocate for this, or they want to teach a Filipino language class with Saranay or with your schools? How do they get involved? Where can they go? Can they message you? Can they email you? Let us know.
Message you on Instagram. That's the easiest one.
Yeah. And then of course with Saranay, just message us. There is a contact us in the bottom there, and we usually respond within 24 hours. The admins do that, and then they spread it out to whoever. So if it's education, it goes to myself and Tita Josie, and then they can volunteer. I think immersion in the culture is one thing that is a benefit for them. So like I said, even if you speak a little bit of Filipino, immersion in that culture will actually help you because, when you hear your surroundings, your brain automatically picks up on it, right?
Of course.
And so, immersion is the best way to do it. Contact us. And if there are certified teachers, I will hand them over or message now that we know, our Edmonton Catholic Filipino language mentors.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for joining us. All this information, I'm so excited to share these 2 episodes. It's just, I feel like there's something coming and it's going to be huge, and everyone, it feels like they're waking up to wanting to learn the culture, the Filipino language, and what we do as a people, as a culture. So this is super exciting for me and all of us at Tayo as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and for our guests for being with us again today and sharing your knowledge. Again, please like our YouTube. And if you have any questions, again, suggestions, write it in the comments or in our anonymous form. You can fill that out and anonymously give us any suggestions that you want to see in our next episode. And don't forget, again, that we are on Spotify. Thank you very much, everyone. And I really appreciate you guys being here and for all the work you do. I'm so excited. Thank you so much.